Hello, let's go on to the next definition, and it's expandable frame is what I see in the SDI glossary. So an expandable frame is actually a pretty neat doodad that people end up, some people end up asking for. And expandable frames are very typically seen mostly in residential type applications is how I've normally seen them. Where there's a principle of having the need for a frame that you've got. If you took a cross section of the jam and you split that and took this rabbit and put it over here and this rabbit and put it over here, if you could take those two pieces and get them to telescope together, and they kind of do so like this, and I'll show you a cut sheet of one. They are used to help contend with irregular wall thicknesses. So, because there's a telescoping principle, you can take the one half of the frame and attach it to the wall, the door half, and get that set true plumb level and square. You can then bring the other side, and because it telescopes, you can kind of have it work better with a wall that may not be consistent all the way down. So that's one reason to use it. Another reason that people use it is because they want to encapsulate the end of the wall, and if you're going to install a frame onto an existing wall, you're either going to butt it up to the end of the wall, or you're going to try to encapsulate or wrap the entire wall. So let's make my fist the wall. You're either going to butt up to it, or you're going to cap it like this. If you have an existing opening, it's kind of difficult to cap the wall like this, because the hole that you have in the wall may or may not be very commensurate to the size that you need, and you may need to modify the wall to account for a standard knockdown frame. But some people want to be able to just go over that and cap that, and rather than try to do it this way, they'll bring half of the frame from this side and half of the frame from this side. And the reason they'll do that is because then they can take fasteners and screw them right through the face of the jam, what would be considered the face, typically the 2-inch component of the frame that you see in elevation. And they can fasten right through that. And then some residential manufacturers will have snap-on steel casing, or you can apply your own wood casing right over the head of the screws. So expandable frames are not very common, but once in a while someone calls and asks for it. They're also really helpful. A third reason is because you've got these three openings, and you know what? They're just a weird size. They're, 7 9/16. So at the end of the day, not really a size that you're going to end up bumping into. So you're going to have a need to wrap the wall because that's what the job calls for. But 7 9/16? Who has frames that are knockdown like that? What you can do is select an expandable frame that incorporates that 7 9/16 within its range of minimum to maximum, is where you'll also use that. So let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at a cut sheet. Lots of people make these, but I'll look at the one that probably just comes to mind first. So let's move on and do that. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, so expandable frame. This is the SDI definition, the glossary. And so it says C adjustable frame. So let's go up earlier in the glossary and look for adjustable frame. Yeah, right here. So adjustable frame. A frame with profile in 2 or more pieces to accommodate various wall thicknesses, also referred to as an expandable frame or a split frame or a split jamb. I've heard it, I need a split jamb. Well, that's generally what they refer to. Now, it would also be nice if they also included this, a frame or borrowed light, because split or expandable frames are really common in borrowed light applications when you have an existing hole in the wall and you need to put a borrowed light there. And I'll tell you this, it's awfully hard to do that when you have drywall and studs, when you are going to try to stick a borrowed light in there and encapsulate the wall as they're showing here. So having split or expandable or adjustable type frames in borrowed light applications is really, really common, because you don't have any wiggle room to get a knockdown 4-piece borrowed light over the end of the wall. If you held out, one of the studs, you could get the one vertical side in, the header and the sill section in, and then you could bring in the other end and then bring your stud in behind it. But in this case, where you've got a hole in the wall and it's roughed in and there's drywall, while expandable or adjustable frames are certainly more expensive than a welded or knockdown borrowed light, there are times when it's really the most elegant, easiest way to do it. And you get the concept of what happens here. All of this piece is just loose. Then you're going to drill, they'll anchor right through this component, as you see here. So this is, I can't say that this design refers to a specific manufacturer, but it's definitely part and parcel of what you'll see when it comes to manufacturers. So let's take a look at the one that comes to mind, because they usually keep them in stock, is DKS. DKS shares some sort of lineage with the people that were from Amweld. And let's take a look at their product catalog. This may work. There may be what we need. Yeah, it's going to be here. Let's take a look. So, expandable masonry frames, EXP 4000. So let's probably go to page 15 and take a look. May have overshot here. So this is, yeah, here we go. Perfect. Expandable masonry or drywall frames. This is just used as a generic type of cut sheet to give you a better description of what we're looking at. So this means, hey, take a look at the cross section. I've split the header or I've split the jamb, and they're going to look just like this, in fact. Okay, so there are, this is not a conversation about DKS frames. This just shows the principle. And what they're showing us here is this frame will get us out to 7 3/4 from a minimum of 4 5/8. So that's a really nice range of expandable frames that they have there. Okay, so that's the one model that they apparently have. Now, I thought that I had for sure seen a better range of these. Let's take a look. And now I have successfully used this material. We used this exact frame one time for a client, and he may have had about a 7-inch wall, and he wanted something to ship quickly. Well, DKS stocks these components, but what this gentleman was doing was something extremely interesting in the fact that he was attaching ballistic material to the inside throat of the frame, and that made it really exciting to be, he was building like a level 5 ballistic safe room, and in the world of ballistic doors, ballistic rated doors, level 5 is, that is just not your average walking around firearm, a level 5. So it was pretty heavy duty material that he was doing. Let's take a look also at carbon steel, because they have they get into expandable material, and if I recall, their catalog showed it, yeah, 2-piece slip frames for borrowed lights. Yeah, they showed it for borrowed lights, and here's their version of that. Big seller. And the third reason that I mentioned why you would use these is exactly this. Holes in walls. It's already framed, and I just need to put a window in there, and it looks like it was new construction. And so here's going to be your expandable type frame. Now what's nice about this is you obviously are going to have some play here with what you end up doing. When you order this type of slip frame from Carpin, you're going to define your wall thickness. But you could also, if it was me, I would also define the range that you need it to work up with for whatever reason, in the sense that I know that the wall is a 1/4 inch out, that kind of thing. So that slip frame for borrowed lights is here, but as we scroll up into the catalog, I spied also their split jamb, which this actually looks just like the SDI catalog, doesn't it? Yeah, it looks very similar to that. So with a 6-inch jamb width, and that would be the jamb depth, we would call that. Jamb width, you should know to call it that, but we would know it as jamb depth. Adjustability is 1 inch from 5 3/4 to 6 3/4, or 4 3/4 to 5 3/4 throat. So at the end of the day, you're going to need to know what wall thickness you need to encapsulate. And when you've got a situation where you really can't do anything other than use a 2-piece or a split jamb, this is a really ideal solution in the sense that it will make your installation very clean. What's really important about this also is, of course, your rough opening, and what is nice about that is it follows standard conventions, which is typically 3/4 inch on each jamb, which make 1.5 inches, and then 3/4 at the header. So if you've got a 3070, you're going to be at 37.5 by 84 3/4. Now, the problem when you're using these types of applications is the benefit of a split frame is that it's a clean installation. The downside of it is they're always more expensive, noticeably more expensive. Okay. The other downside is that they're probably going to require that you buy a custom size door, unless you get into really modifying the frame to account for the rough opening that you have. So if you've got a rough opening that's 40 by 85, yeah, you're not going to install a 3070 in there because of your rough opening requirement here. So encapsulating a wall with a split frame approach can certainly require the need for a custom width and custom height door. And if you want to work around, if you want to turn that on its end and work with a standard stock door, let's say 3080 or 3070, you're going to need to rework the rough opening in order for that to work, which means then you might have a problem with this dimension, which then means you might just want to order a standard knockdown 3-piece frame rather than a split frame. These are really best suited when you are not going to modify the wall whatsoever at all. Okay, and if I were to dig into the Seco technical manual, the Curry's technical manual, go back in time with the Kiwani, they had an adjustable frame as well, and they had a name for it. I just don't recall what it was. So the point is we could go on and on. I think the important part is that we've defined what we are using this type of frame for. Okay, so let's go back to where we were in the glossary, and that was expandable frame. Face welded is going to be the next thing. Let's move on to face welded. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.